Welcome to the Season 2 finale of Funeral Potatoes and Wool Mittens, a show for people who embrace the warm and cozy spirit of everyday living in the Midwest. From the blog Random Sweets, I'm your host, Staci Mergenthal. As we begin this episode, I'd like you to just pause a few seconds, close your eyes, and recall your memories of birthday cakes. Perhaps you can physically remember the Barbie cake or the cupcakes with G.I. Joe stuck in the frosting, or maybe your recollection is tucked away but visualized in your mom's old photo albums. Whatever your birthday cake memories, I hope that they evoke happy times. Today's story is a reminder that not all kids have the luxury of celebrating their birthday with a fun cake. But it's also a reminder that just one small act of kindness and a little frosting and sprinkles can light up a child's special day, showing them that people really care about them and that they are not forgotten. So we begin with Carolyn McGovern and Katie Lipe. They are the co-leaders of the For Goodness Cakes Twin Cities chapter. It's a nonprofit organization that gives underprivileged youth the chance to have a birthday celebration by matching volunteers to bake special cakes just for them. It's also a nationwide organization. Nearly 30 For Goodness Cakes chapters have delivered more than 32,000 cakes across the United States. And we're also going to hear from 2 of the agencies that For Goodness Cake serves in the Twin Cities, and 5 of the volunteer bakers, all from the Twin Cities area. Now, while you're listening, you can browse photos of the guests so that you can see the faces and a bunch of the cakes that they've baked and donated, and those are all on my website, randomsweets.com. Katie and Carolyn, thank you for joining me.
Absolutely. Our pleasure.
Yes.
We have such a heartfelt topic to share. We're blending 2 activities that many of us love, which are baking and giving back to our communities, especially to kids and young adults, all by what you guys say is spreading love, joy, and frosting. I'm excited to hear your story and hear about For Goodness Cakes, and you're specifically from the For Goodness Cakes Twin Cities chapter. So most of what we're going to talk about today is specific to your chapter, but yet a lot of it's going to relate to the way the organization is run in general. So we'll just kind of get into it, and you guys can take it away. You probably don't even need me here today. You can just talk about this. But Katie and Carolyn, if you want to just share a little bit about yourselves first and kind of let people know who you are.
I'm Carolyn McGovern. I live in Burnsville, Minnesota, with my husband and our cat Marigold. I work for Brighton Hospice as a volunteer coordinator in my real job, I guess. So very much similar work to For Goodness Cakes, finding and recruiting volunteers. But as you might imagine, it's an easier sell asking someone to make a cake than being a hospice volunteer. So I enjoy my work as a chapter lead. It's a nice break from the hospice world, but I enjoy that work too. So I joined For Goodness Cakes a little over 2 years ago as a baker. I was a member of the Sprinkle Squad first, and then Katie and I became the co-leads last fall. So still kind of learning that role a little bit. There's a lot to handle as a chapter lead, but we're enjoying it. But when I first started, my husband and I would work on cakes together, and he would do the characters or the cake toppers out of fondant on my bakes. And we enjoyed, trying out new things and playing around with stuff in the kitchen. But now that I'm a chapter lead, he has taken on a Sprinkle Squad baking position, and I get to help on his bake. So I still get to help out with those.
You should tell them about your recent marble run cake.
Oh, yes. A couple weeks ago, I had a marble run cake request that I saw come up on the calendar, and I knew we had to do it. So if you're not familiar with a marble run, it's basically like an obstacle course on a cake that a marble can go through.
It's like mousetrap for a cake.
Yeah, kind of like mousetrap for a cake.
Mousetrap, yeah.
And most normal people use plastic tracks for the marble to go through because it's a lot easier. But me being me, I said, I want to make it all edible. So we created a track out of Rice Krispie treats and fondant. I did a chocolate tunnel that was shaped on a pipe that I found at Menards, so that the marble could go through the cake. And of course, we got gumballs for the marbles so that just everything could be edible. And there were tears, there were swear words, but this cake was incredible. It was done. So it was
really incredible. As you can see, Carolyn really takes the quick, easy route to things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Katie.
So I'm Katie Lipe. I live in St. Paul, with my partner and my 5 animals. I have a dog and 4 cats. I started forgiveness cakes over 2 years ago, two and a half or so. And just like Carolyn was saying, then there was kind of the call for new chapter leaders. And I thought, why not? I am a retired school teacher. So I taught for over 33 years and then retired. I did most of my teaching in special ed, but did also general ed. And currently now I just kind of fill my time with a lot of additional jobs. So I do tutoring, I bake goods and sell them. I do a lot of crafting and sell that. I also do a lot of pet sitting. So I just kind of like fill my time with a lot of stuff. And then the co-chapter lead for Goodness Cakes. I don't eat refined sugar. So it's kind of an awkward thing that I do bake with refined sugar, but I have very, very willing testers in my house. And so there are people that just rise up to the occasion immediately. I actually have neighbors that are very willing to test things too. So
Well, for both of you, what kind of memories do you have around special occasion cakes for when you were a kid? Does it evoke anything for you?
I was thinking about this and I thought I didn't bake a lot of cakes when I was a kid. I baked a lot of baked goods. So my brother, my next oldest brother, especially, we had like a troop of his friends that would come over and they would be like, "What are you making? What are you making?" And then they would devour it quickly. And one birthday, they gave me a ceramic bowl and wooden spoons and all of the fixings to make chocolate chip cookies in there. That was my gift from them, but really it was a gift to themselves. But that being said, my mom used to make us cakes all the time. And one period of my life, I was obsessed with peanut butter and jelly. I just was absolutely obsessed with it. And she made me a peanut butter and jelly cake. She made
Oh,
chocolate cake with peanut butter on as a filling and then jelly on the top and then vanilla icing. And I gotta tell you, it was delicious.
Delicious.
I didn't make it, but boy, I still think about it.
and memorable, right?
Very, very.
What about you, Carolyn?
I remember birthdays growing up. It was always a big deal to be able to pick out what kind of cake I wanted my mom to bake. That was always, she always threw that out there. Whatever kind you want. And I know my sister and my dad were always pretty, oh, I always want a chocolate cake. And they stuck to the regular stuff. And I don't really know why, but I took great pleasure in coming up with what I thought were more unusual requests. I remember one year I wanted a strawberry cake with blue frosting. And I don't know why that sounded fun to me. And it was just like, that sounded weird. And it was like, let's see if mom can do it. Well, of course she can do it. My mom can make anything. I grew up in the kitchen with my mom, but they were never elaborate. They were never over the top. I'm sure if I told her I wanted a marble run cake, she would have been like, no. But it was special because I got to pick what it would be.
So you both have good memories. I have good memories of cake. My mom would always make this chocolate cake that we loved with a snow frosting, the vintage recipe from her mom. But what we're going to talk about today is because there are children and young adults who don't have necessarily right now in their life, they don't have somebody who's baking them a cake for their birthday, or if I understand correctly, also you do some graduation cakes.
Yes.
So you are giving them the memories like what you have, but just in a different way. So this is very special. So let's just talk about For Goodness Cakes in general, because this is a countrywide thing. You're in the Twin Cities chapter from the Minneapolis, St. Paul area. What is For Goodness Cakes and the Twin Cities chapter all about?
For Goodness Cakes is, like you said, we're a nonprofit organization that really just focuses on giving underprivileged youth a chance to have a birthday with a celebration. We match volunteers with those special event cakes, and we make them just for that kid, just for that event, whatever they want. The organization was started in 2016 in California. Our Twin Cities chapter was started in February of 2020. We currently have, I think, 29 chapters nationwide, if I'm not mistaken. That number
31.
fluctuates a little bit, but I think it's
31
29.
now.
31.
No,
Okay, I was
31.
wrong. But those 31 chapters, we are on track to be delivering 1,000 cakes per month very soon, which is so exciting. That's 1,000 birthdays, graduations, or special events that, like you said, otherwise might not be celebrated. And just thinking about that is heartbreaking. And I think we're really glad that we can do our small part to help out those kids and families and agencies with their cakes.
Carolyn and I both are the interim co-leads also for the Cambridge chapter in Minnesota. And so between the two chapters of Minnesota, we have by June 25th, we will have delivered 2,121 cakes in 4 years. And we have 385 bakers. So our bakers, which we call the Sprinkle Squad, are little angels. And I kind of like to tell people I used to see people walking with cake boxes just like downtown Minneapolis. And I thought, oh, they must have some special event. But now I kind of feel like they might have been in the Sprinkle Squad, just going and delivering these little cakes to people along the way.
Oh, yeah.
It's kind of cool.
Angels with spatulas.
And sprinkles.
Right.
Right. Lots of love.
Did you say 2,121 cakes?
2,121 cakes by June 25th.
Which is 2,121 kids who got a celebration just for themselves because you guys did those cakes. So talk a little bit about how the organization works and how it's funded.
The organization, it's all online based. So all of our agency, after we do an onboarding, and there's a process to that, but after they get onboarded, then they're given a link that they can fill out for each child, and they can put in the kind of cake the child wants, what flavor filling they want, if they don't want it, what flavor frosting or type of frosting they want. And then they can also put in what theme the child would like. And if there's any special directions, like they want the name on the cake and they want their year, their birthday year, not birthday year, their age, or any of that, they can put down in the notes section. So that gets put into our system, and our system is live. And then all of our bakers have access to that system. So they go into what's now called their portal. And in their portal, they can see all of the bakes that are coming up. And they also see the address of where it would be dropped off, the timing, when it would be dropped off, the day it would be dropped off, all of the information. And then they get to see what the bake is, also the theme. And so they can choose whatever works best for them in their schedule. And then they decide if they want to accept a bake or not. If they do, they just go online and click it and they accept it, and all the information gets put into their portal. And then after that, then they just figure out how they're going to make their cake the best that they can. And our sprinklers are really good at decorating. I mean, they totally put me to shame, but they are super fantastic. And so then they are responsible for getting that bake to that address within that time frame that was set up. Our funding, we actually were super lucky to receive a very generous funding recently by Power of 100. It's an organization, I think it's nationwide, but one of our sprinklers, volunteers, our bakers, she nominated us. And so because of that, then we got a very generous donation from the organization. So that has helped us quite a bit, because now Carolyn and I can spend our time recruiting more volunteers and recruiting more agencies versus fundraising, because we have to make a minimum amount of money quarterly to pay for our online services. We also have a baker who has kind of taken it upon herself, which is really generous. Every time she bakes a cake, she sends it out a request to her large group of friends or followers. I'm not 100% certain how it all works out. But after she bakes a cake, all of a sudden we start getting random money getting donated into our account. So it's really kind of awesome.
Just to note there, when they're delivering to the agency, so they don't actually get to see the children. It's kind of a privacy thing. And then the donations because the sprinklers, the bakers, they are volunteering not only their time to do the cake and deliver it, but also paying for the ingredients and such themselves, correct?
Yes.
Exactly right. Yeah. I'm in the process of trying to get some other companies that are Minnesota based to help support our bakers, like with flour or cake mixes or whatever.
We're always jealous of the California chapters when we see notices they get donations from, Netflix or Food Network when they're done with their cooking shows. Oh, we had extra fondant. Here you go, guys. And we're like, ship some of that to Minnesota. We'd
They
like
get
some too.
gourds of chocolate.
Yeah.
That's
So,
our goal. It's constantly to try to get some free stuff for our volunteers because they do not only give their time, but they give all of the cost of the stuff, and they're not able to deduct that on taxes either. So it would be great to be able to support them because they are very generous.
yeah, I mean, the things that go behind not just the cake and the frosting, but you're also the box that it needs to go in. And
Yep.
usually, if you're doing a box, you need the flat piece, cardboard piece that goes on the bottom to keep it steady and then driving it. So your gas and your miles. So, what impact is For Goodness Cakes making?
I think our agencies can speak to that more. We know that there are several situations where we've been made of, like there was a couple years ago when I first started baking, one of the cakes that went out to a 21-year-old who had been facing adversity, and he got this cake, whatever he had requested, and it brought him to tears because what ended up coming out of the whole thing was that this was his first birthday cake ever in his entire life. So he was 21 and never gotten it. We also have agencies that are domestic violence situations where their parents are very afraid that the kids will go unrecognized because when they've left with nothing. And so we're able to give the cakes to those kids, and just the moms especially are just overjoyed, and the kids are too, that they were able to be recognized. So it's just bringing joy and letting those children know that they're not forgotten and that people do love them, even strangers.
Yeah. What are the agencies? Just give me some examples of some of the types of agencies that you're serving.
So we serve anywhere between after school programs of children that are underprivileged, to domestic violence homes, to places where families are now living in low income housing, also to schools that are supporting children that are also disadvantaged. And so it's a wide gamut.
There's also some like job placement agencies that are working with young adults to get them, their first job or help with hiring. So that's some of our, older recipients working with that, or graduation cakes. We work with a couple agencies that work with human trafficking victims, getting them back on their feet, transitional housing. So there's one organization that works, they say 2 generations at a time. So it's for young mothers and their children, getting them back on their feet, but also helping with childcare and after school things. And we do the birthday cakes for them. So.
Okay. Did you say how many agencies that you're currently working with?
I think we have 40. I wrote this down somewhere. I think we have like 49 agencies.
Okay. And you're still looking to grow, right?
Yes. And if anybody has an idea of an agency that isn't on our list, we certainly would love to have that information and check them out.
There's also information on our website about agency requirements and all of the like FAQs for that. If you think you have someone who might qualify, we'd love to talk to them and see if they do. Yes, we are an all remote, all online agency. So there is so much information on our website, and both the For Goodness Cakes website and our Twin Cities specific one has answers to all of your questions.
And because this podcast, I mean, goes out to anyone everywhere, no matter where you're at, you can look and see if there's a chapter in your area and then get connected with that chapter. Or I will also share, there are links about if there's not a chapter in my area, how do I go about getting one started? So, because we're a very Midwest podcast, and I looked and I don't see any in Wisconsin, none in South Dakota. There's none in North Dakota. I
Lots
don't
of
think
room
I
for
saw
growth.
Iowa. What?
There's lots of room for growth.
Lots of room for growth for chapters, absolutely. And even in Minnesota, of course, there's Twin Cities, and then you're growing Cambridge, but that's it. And Minnesota's a big state, so lots of
Right.
room for bakers. Okay.
Duluth, perhaps.
Oh,
Rochester, lovely
yeah.
locations for a chapter.
Mankato has a
Mankato,
good community.
absolutely.
Katie gave you a little insight into the impact Forgiveness Cakes has on the youth who are receiving these cakes for their special day. But we also wanted to hear from two agency leaders. First up, Chris Bernard is the Family Services Director for the Jeremiah program in St. Paul, Minnesota. It's a 2-generational program that partners with single moms and their kids as the mothers go back to school to finish their post-secondary degree and disrupting the cycle of poverty 2 generations at a time.
On the surface, it may seem like a small token, a small partnership, but it is actually quite the opposite. This is probably one of my favorite partnerships. It really is, because these are not just, a basic cake. And yes, they may not be professional bakers, but you would be surprised, and you could put past anybody else. They should be on, any one of these baking shows, because what they put out is nothing short of phenomenal. Any type of theme that the kids may request, anything from, Frozen to Spider-Man and Batman. They'll put it out, and they'll put it out to the nines. And so to see the reaction, not only of the kids, but the moms, who are able to, those cakes can be super duper expensive when you have a custom made cake like this. And so just the amount of love and care and personalization that For Goodness Cakes, for goodness sakes, thank goodness for them. They've really been just an incredible partner that makes, and I would not say that there's one family that I know here that does not utilize the partnership when birthdays roll around.
What would you say to the volunteer bakers if you could?
Well, I would say a million times thank you to begin with. From the top and the bottom of my heart, and on behalf of every single mom and the kids that they have there, the joy, it resonates beyond just the day. It's something that it sticks with them, and they'll continue to talk about. And so I'm a baker myself, and so I know the labor of love and just the joy that you have in the baking process. But then the joy that's compounded when it's just such a unique, personalized gift like that. And I can understand that you don't get to see the face or the reaction, but I can tell you that the reaction is just so joyous every single time. And thank you, thank you, thank you.
So if there's partner agencies or somebody listening that knows of a partner agency that isn't, or an agency that isn't coordinating with Forgiveness Cakes, what would you say to them?
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought this up too, because this piece is so important. There are obviously priorities and responsibilities, but this is one of the partnerships and one of those things that really does trump those other things, because this is the real life. This is the things that make memories. And I would say that For Goodness Cakes is a hidden gem if you don't know about it. And for those that do, they know what a great resource they have. So if there's any partner agencies out there that have not utilized that, you can put off what you have to do today to start your relationship with For Goodness Cakes, because it's going to make the world a difference to all the kids and the families that will benefit from it.
That's a great testament to it. My understanding is it's fairly simple to start working with them.
Yeah, and the online system itself to request a cake is, I have many different partner agencies that do other different types of resources in the community, which are fantastic. But For Goodness Cakes is by far the easiest request process that I have utilized. So it's very seamless.
Do you have any memorable ones where you want to share a story about a child that received a Forgiveness Cakes from someone?
My goodness. I remember this one boy who was absolutely obsessed with Spider-Man. And I was able to be there to deliver the cake to him after the volunteer dropped it off. and his eyes lit up. He jumped up and down. I mean, he practically turned into Spider-Man when he saw the cake. So,
How old was he? What was
he was 5. He
five? Turned 5. Okay.
yeah.
Was there anything else that you want to add?
Well, you've asked the very poignant questions, ones that I hope would inspire anyone else who's listening to check out For Goodness Cakes, and to check out even furthermore how you support them, Staci, and just take advantage of the opportunity. And if you're thinking about becoming a volunteer, don't hesitate, because you're going to help make a memory that will last a lifetime for a family and for a child.
As a family youth advocate at the Home Free Women's Shelter, Melissa Westphal experiences the joy that For Goodness Cakes brings to the kiddos that she serves, who have escaped a dangerous environment, but they've also left their home.
My heart is about kids' help, because you never know what impact you make on kids, whether you're with them for 10 minutes, for 2 months. So I'll have kids that's I see like 10 years later, like, hey, I remember when you did this for me, or when you did this. I'm like, really? I was only seeing you the one time. And they're like, yeah. So I feel like you can always make a bad situation into a good situation. We're a women's abuse shelter. So moms with their kids, when they're trying to get out of an abuse situation, they'll come here, and our stay usually is 30 to 45 days. They come here, and then I will work with the kids. So I will help get them clothes, school supplies, because they come with nothing, because they're just trying to escape their situation. So if they have a birthday, this is where the cake place comes in. We can order a cake for them, and then we get them toys, and we just try to make their day as special as they can. A lot of women are very sad to be here when it's their child's birthday, but then when they experience it here, they're like, oh my God, it was amazing. I can't believe all the support, and how you threw my kids a party, and how you just made me feel like they're just so happy. And like, I see a lot of parents cry when they get the cakes, and they're just overwhelmed. But it's just, the kids smile. The kids are so happy when they see the cakes. They're so happy when they're like, oh, that's mine. I ordered that, or I like trucks, or I like cars. It's really cool just to see.
What would you say to an organization about being a partner agency with For Goodness Cakes?
Oh, I think they will love it. They're great. They listen, they help, they do above and beyond what I think they should. But I mean, they'll just call and check in. Hey, how's it going? Do you need anything? I mean, they're amazing. It's very nice.
Do you have any, like, a memorable recipient or a moment that you want to share?
Oh, I mean, I have a lot of them. There's been a lot. Like, I had a kid's first birthday. Like, they made him a smash cake and their regular cake, and
Oh, yeah.
it's like looking at me like, what am I supposed to do with this? So we kind of had to like put his finger in it to get him, and then we put in his finger in his mouth, and then he was like you could have seen the instant smile and happiness, and then he went down. The cake was everywhere. He threw it everywhere. The child was so happy.
Mm-hmm.
I've had like 16 and 17-year-olds even kind of, you could see that they're overjoyed, happy, and like they can't believe that they got it right, or how much detail. Some of the cake's details they're just great. The decorations, they just go beyond, and they sometimes will write side notes on the cake thing like, hey, you're loved, or we're thinking of you, or have a happy birthday. And it's just, they're just very, and the kids, they see this, they love it, because they don't expect anything here. So I think anyone that gets to be involved with them will be lucky, because they do lots.
It's time to hear more about the volunteer bakers and donors who support For Goodness Cakes in Minnesota. So let's go back and talk to Katie and Carolyn some more. Well, let's move on to talk about this. I love that you call the Sprinkle Squad. So the volunteer bakers. Tell me again how many volunteer bakers you have in the Twin Cities chapter.
In Twin Cities, we have 352.
And I see on For Goodness Cakes website, as of in September 2023, you had a total of 5,358 volunteers. I mean, that's incredible.
Mm-hmm. That's a
Yeah.
lot of sprinkles.
I think that's nationwide at that point. The 5.
Right. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. You've said, oh, our bakers are phenomenal and put you to shame. But let's talk about the different levels, because an at-home baker, pro baker, commercial baker, right? Like, what kind of level do you need to be to be a sprinkle squad?
Everyone is welcome. I think it was our West regional director, Kim Roberts, and she said, it's not about perfection, it's about effort, which I really like. We all started somewhere. We have professional bakers. We love them. We have most are home bakers who just are interested and love baking and want to try new techniques. And I would say I'm somewhere in the middle, but I started just as a casual baker who wanted to help. And if it's a cake mix, that's great. I still mostly use cake mixes because I know they're not going to fail me. Whether it's homemade frosting or canned frosting, it's sugar goo you put on a cake. A kid's going to love it. Sprinkles cover all kinds of frosting errors. We'll tell you that, some cakes make me cry because they're not working the way that I think they should. But a kid's going to love it no matter what it looks like because it's made just for them. And that's the most important part.
I think that was one of the key things that I learned because I had a lot of pressure that I put on myself to make it look just like this Pinterest one, or whatever. and I, like Carolyn, was just a casual baker. I just thought whatever. But what I've had the opportunity to actually give the cake to a couple children, and they really just don't care how perfect the edges are and that there are no bubbles in it. And the frosting is just so, all they really care about is just, it's their cake. That's what they really care about. And that it's just for them. So I for me, started baking with the idea that I would challenge myself to learn new things about baking because it was a blank slate for me. And so every cake, I just tried to learn new things. Some were good, some were not. And I've learned not to try those again. But, it's just whatever it is. The kid really, they want it just for them. And that's really what it comes down to. So nobody has to be perfect.
Yeah.
The only pressure is the pressure we put on ourselves as bakers.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
There's no guarantee of what this cake is going to look like, but it's made with love. So,
right.
Yeah. Maybe, like me, I'm an empty nester. So my two kids that I used to bake fun birthday cakes for, well, my husband did a lot more of the fancy, the artwork. He's the artist in the family, but those things we don't really do anymore because they're in their early 20s. And so you can take on some of that fun and deliver the happiness that way to other kids who wouldn't normally have.
And if I could just capitalize on something you just said, we do have a bunch of people that actually have two bakers in the house or two best friends or whatever. One bakes and the other decorates. So just because you might feel nervous about decorating, you could certainly find somebody who really only wants to decorate and not have anything to do with the baking. So, you both go through the process. To become a volunteer, there's an online classes that need to be taken. So you would both do it, but it's kind of a nice experience to share with a friend or partner or whatever.
I was going to ask about the orientation. I see there's a little bit of onboarding for a new volunteer for a baker. I'm guessing it's not very intense.
It's not. And it's all done online. It's at their convenience. It has two parts. It's kind of the food safety aspects and then how the organization works, just some basics on For Goodness Cakes and how the volunteer portal works, how they can access the task calendar and pick up any available bakes. But it's pretty short. It's pretty simple. It's the basics of we want to make sure you're not making anyone sick with your kitchen or you're making a cake. Other than that, we trust you and have fun.
Since recording this episode a few months ago, the Twin Cities and Cambridge chapters now have 411 active volunteer bakers. They're working with 62 agencies, and as of today, they have hand-delivered 2,375 cakes, which means a minimum of 2,375 smiles and happy children. So let's go talk to a few members of the Sprinkle Squad who are spreading joy across the Twin Cities, one cake, one kid at a time. Audrey Hyatt considers herself an adventurous baker, always willing to try a new recipe, but she also likes to stick with some of her family favorites, like the chocolate cake recipe with mayonnaise that one of her mom's teachers shared with her back in the 1950s. Throughout her more than 40-year marketing career, Audrey has sought out and looked for volunteer opportunities. And last year was a highlight for her as she was able to marry two of her passions together, with the Women from Her Power of 100 Club contributing and donating almost $20,000 to the Forgiveness Cakes Twin Cities chapter.
I actually saw Jamie Lehman, who's the founder of For Goodness Cakes. I saw her interviewed on the Kelly Clarkson show.
Oh.
And I'm always kind of looking for volunteer opportunities that, not only am I interested in, but that I can fit into my life.
Mm.
And this seemed like the perfect marriage. Like, I love to bake. And it's just, I think I was just stunned by the fact that there are so many kids that don't get recognized on their birthday. Like, that still stuns me, to be honest. So when I heard about this and that there's kids that actually don't get a birthday cake or some kind of treat that they want on their birthday, or it's not celebrated or recognized, I was just like, oh my gosh, that's terrible. And I will admit, though, it took me a while to sign up. And it did because, as soon as I saw Jamie being interviewed, I went to their website and, maybe you've looked at it, but they've got all these beautiful cakes that
Yeah.
the volunteers make. I mean, they're unbelievable, right? Like,
Mhm.
so creative. And I am not that level of decorator, I should say. That intimidated me a lot. But that the organization is so adamant about, it's not about your skills, it's about providing something for, a child on their birthday. Make them feel recognized, that somebody in the community cares about them. And so I had to put that aside, and I'm like, I do want to get better at my decorating, trust me, but it's like, work full time and all that. But when I'm retired, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to focus on my decorating skills. But so I actually sign up for a lot of the bakes that where someone isn't asking for something like elaborate. There's a lot of organizations that do like events for kids, and they want like a nondescript cake or a nondescript cupcake. So then you can bake whatever you want, and you don't have to decorate it like Minnie Mouse or something like that. So that's where I feel comfortable. And and it's worked out great. And I also just love the flexibility. I can go on the website and see what's available, and if I think I can do it, if it works with my schedule. I work full time, so I can't deliver cakes during the day sometimes. That's really difficult. So just the whole way this thing is set up is just amazing. And it's just doing so much good. Like, the ripple effect, I think, is just outstanding.
Mm-hmm. What moments make you just know why you're doing what you're doing?
So I did a bake for a little boy who was turning 4. And the request was for Oreo cupcakes. And it said, if you can't make an Oreo cupcake, if you could at least just crush Oreos on the top. And I thought, I make a mean Oreo cupcake. It's got an Oreo on the bottom. It's got crushed Oreos in the batter. It's got crushed Oreos in the buttercream. And then you decorate it with one of those little mini Oreos. It's like Oreo overload. And so I made these and, delivered them. And, we don't get to meet the kids for privacy reasons. So you drop them off at the organization or the agency. But sometimes we do get comments that get filtered to our chapter leader, who then tells us about, what they heard. And so the mom wrote a comment that, she was so happy her son ate 3 of the cupcakes. They were exactly what he wanted. And she said, if it weren't for this baker, I wouldn't have been able to afford cupcakes for my son's birthday. And think about that. Like, you don't have money to provide, I made a dozen cupcakes. Like, it was just, I don't want to say it was insignificant to me, but it's just like, I made a dozen cupcakes. And for this person, she wouldn't have been able to provide her child with that moment. So that's when I was like, yep, this is definitely something I want to keep doing.
So we all know that when you're working full time, you have a family, but then you take this on, you have to have somebody who supports you, who in your life supports you doing this.
Well, definitely my husband for many reasons. I'm not exactly the neatest baker, but he is always there to help do cleanup. And he has actually delivered for me if I get into a pinch and, I've signed up for a bake and I'm like,
Yeah.
or maybe it's near his office or something like that. So he has delivered for me. And he's also always willing to be a taste tester. So, you know, if I make a dozen cupcakes, there's usually a couple extra. So he's very happy to partake of the goodies. So
Yeah.
yeah, he's a really good supporter.
What would you say to somebody, whether it's in the Twin Cities chapter or For Goodness Cakes, anywhere? What would you say to somebody if they're listening and they're like, oh, I might want to be a baker?
I think it's the flexibility and just that you don't have to be a professional baker to do this. You don't need to be a professional baker or a professional decorator. That, you know, you can fit it into your life. You can do 2 bakes a year if you want, 1 bake a year, once a month. Like, you get to decide how to fit this into your life. So I think I would definitely tell anybody to check out their website. They've got so much great information. But just not only that, just, I mean, it feels good. You know, when I talked about the 4-year-old that his mom wouldn't be able to afford the cupcakes, like, there's nothing bad about making cakes for kids. And it just gives you a really, I feel so much gratitude for having found this organization and to be a part of it. I think it's just amazing.
Take us to that moment when you drop off. I know you deliver the cakes to the agencies, but you don't get to see the kids. But what's that feeling that you have knowing that there are those 4-year-olds having a party that now have cupcakes or a cake that probably wouldn't have other? What are you feeling?
There's a part of me, I'm going to admit, I feel a little sad. Like, it's sad to me that this is the reality for so many kids, that, you know, if this organization didn't exist, I mean, you know, for the most part, these kids wouldn't be getting cake. So sometimes I feel sad, but again, I also just feel super grateful. I feel grateful to Jamie, the founder, for having, you know, she thought of this and it kind of bugged her years over years. And then she decided to create this organization and it has just blossomed. Like, it's in, I think there's 29 or 30 chapters. And I mean, it's just amazing. So I do feel sad, but I also feel so grateful. And, you know, I just think, man, if I was able to put a smile on a kid's face today, today's a good day then.
Recent University of Minnesota food science grad Kenzie Taylor began volunteer baking 4 years ago, but her love of baking really blossomed during her first job baking at a little local bakery. You can see some of her baking creations on her Instagram, which is at Kenzie's Pastries.
My parents always made a huge deal out of my birthday. So I grew up loving my birthday, and I also grew up with a huge sweet tooth. So my mom would actually always get cakes from the bakery that I ended up working at as my first job. And she would always make it a special theme, whatever I was into that year. So I really just grew up with a great relationship with birthday cakes and celebrations and things like that.
Mm-hmm. And so now fast forward, you're 21 and you're involved with For Goodness Cakes. So you are serving children who maybe don't have those great memories of cakes. So tell me a little bit about how you became a Sprinkle Squad volunteer, a sprinkler.
So again, I'm going to be talking about my mom probably a lot through this, but she brought me I believe it was a Star Tribune article in 2020, and it was explaining it. I think it had like some flashy title. It was like, join the Sprinkle Squad. And I was like, what is that? They explained the concept of For Goodness Cakes and how you have the opportunity to bake for underprivileged youth in the area. And it sounded like all of these great things combine into something that I love and that I happen to be good at. And so I signed up immediately. I took the food safety quiz and I was really excited because that was also when I was entering my food science student career. So I wanted to get more into the background of that a little bit. And I joined it and I started immediately, and it was just the best.
How did you just know in your heart that this is just something that you wanted to take on, that you wanted to share your time and talents with?
I am so privileged, and all I want to do is give back to those who don't have the same opportunities as I do. And it's honestly the least of what I could do, but it ended up being the perfect win-win situation, I would say, because I love baking. I love baking cakes. I love bringing joy to others, but my family doesn't have a sweet tooth like I do. So I always want to be baking things, and I have nobody to eat it. So I love that I have this creative outlet that gets to benefit children. So I can bake for myself, but also for others. And it really just works out for the best for everyone.
So now I'm thinking you're in college and were you in a dorm? How were you baking? Did you do it at your place or did you go to your parents?
I would have my mom, she would come pick me up sometimes, and then that's how I would get home because I didn't have a car with me. I mean, I always made it work.
Have you had some moments that you can think of that you just made you know that why you're doing what you're doing? Like, this is worth it. This is why I'm doing it.
I would also, I mean, I would sometimes get thank you notes after the fact, emails from whoever I was coordinating with, and that always felt good. But I mean, I don't do it for that. I don't know. I mean, I just do it because it's something that I love to do, and I love bringing joy to others. I love that. I think the first cake I did was for um a little girl who was turning 1, and I was like, how special is
Oh,
it that I get to be involved from a distance, but I get to, I mean, I get to make their first birthday cake, and that's not something that
yeah.
I get to do every day. So that's something that was just really special to me.
Do you have a favorite, like a favorite cake that you made or a favorite story behind a recipient? Is it that 1 year old or is there something else in those 4 years that you've been baking?
Yes, I did a princess cake where they put, so okay, let me go back a little bit. One of my favorite birthday memories from when I was a kid was when I got this birthday cake that had a Barbie in the cake, and then the cake was her dress. And I think these were popular around that time. I
Hmm.
don't really know when this was, but maybe like 15 years ago. Um, and I haven't seen any of them recently. So when I saw that the theme for this cake, this is maybe 2 years ago now, was a princess cake. And it was pretty like an they didn't really provide many details. They said she likes pink, she likes princesses. I was like, I'm gonna recreate my favorite birthday cake for this little girl. So it was super fun. I went to Target. I like got to go into the Barbie aisle, which I hadn't been to in I can't even remember how long. I picked out a little Barbie, and I also got her an outfit to give on the side. But I got to put it in the cake, and that was my favorite ever. I got to do like super detailed ruffle on the dress and all those details. It was a lot of fun. That was by far my favorite cake I've made.
Can you just imagine her eyes just wide open and when she saw that cake for the first time?
I know. It makes me so happy.
And then pictures, I'm sure they probably have pictures, so she'll have those memories forever. Do you remember how old? What did you say?
I think she was maybe about 5 or 6. So I think that
Okay.
she was the same age that I was when I got that cake.
So she will definitely remember that.
Yes, that's my
Yeah. So your mom obviously is very supportive of what you're doing. Is that who you would say that in your life who supports you in doing the forgiveness cakes volunteering activities?
absolutely. I mean, she discovered it for me. She always, when I needed to get home, when I didn't have a car during 2020, she would bring me home so I could make cakes. She definitely has fueled my baking for as long as I can remember.
She just has to be really proud of you too.
She reposts all of my things that I make, and I mean, that's how I got my first job. She was posting pictures of my baking on her Facebook page, and one of the employees at the bakery saw my stuff and was like, "You should have Kenzie come in." And I brought my little portfolio. I mean, I'm pretty sure I was too young to actually be legally working, but
And probably too young to have a portfolio. Most
yeah.
of us don't have that at a young age,
That's a
but
good
cool.
point.
Good for you. Yeah. If somebody sees this in the newspaper or hears this podcast or something and says, "Oh my gosh, I'd love to be a sprinkler," what advice would you give to somebody who would be interested in being a volunteer baker?
I would say run, don't walk. The best. It's so much fun. There's no cons to doing this. And it's just, I think it's one of the best organizations. I mean, it's the best one I've ever heard of in the area. I love that it's all over the United States. So I would tell that person to sign up immediately and look at the gallery of photos and get inspired and just have a great time with it.
I know when you deliver these cakes, you don't actually get to see the children or the families, the recipients, but what's going through your mind when you are delivering the cakes?
The feeling that I'm left with when I'm driving away is just gratitude. Um, I'm so grateful that privileged enough to be able to provide experiences for other children and have the means to do so and fuel my creative outlet and provide joy to children. I just don't know what else you could ask for.
If you haven't needed a Kleenex yet, you might need one when you hear Tiffany Gale's story about how her volunteer baking brought her full circle to someone from her past. And having worked many years in the local nonprofit sector, Tiffany started volunteering a year ago with firsthand knowledge and appreciation for the work that the agencies that Forgiveness Cake sprinklers bake for.
My mom would often purchase cakes for birthdays, but interestingly enough, her mother, my maternal grandmother, was a wonderful baker. And everyone came to her house on Sunday afternoons after church. And she always had a cake and a pie or a cobbler every week. And so she really loved to bake. And so that is kind of a main like cake memory for me was, and even for my daughters, especially my older two daughters, they remember great grandma always had a beautiful cake that, you know, sat on the table that was there for us on Sundays. So
when did you start as a sprinkle squad or sprinkler volunteer baker with Forgiveness Cakes?
I started about, I think it's been maybe like a little over a year. And yeah, it's been a little over a year. And I essentially just like did a Google search. So I'm kind of in this season, I've been in this season of life where I'm time affluent. And so I was looking for like a place and a space to be able to share my gifts and talents and kind of looking at the different things that come naturally or innately to me and just trying to figure out like how I can share that with people outside of our home and, you know, like besides friends and family. And so I did a Google search and I was looking for different things and Forgiveness Cakes popped up and I read about it and I kind of bookmarked it and sat on it for a little while and then thought about it some more. And then I was like, because I think I was a little bit intimidated because I'm like, well, I bake, but I'm not like a professional baker, you know, even though they are very clear, like you do not have to be a professional baker. So my husband said, you always bake with love. So I said, okay. And I signed up.
Wow. How did you know in your heart this is something that you want to give your time and talent to?
So Staci, one of the things, quite honestly, was that for me, I can, so with the exception of maybe 2 or so of the bakes that I've done, I can get to those bakes in about 5-10 minutes tops from my home.
Okay, so location,
but not just because of convenience, location in terms of being able to give back almost in my backyard, if you will.
Do you know how many cakes have you made in the year that you've been with Forgiveness Cakes?
I think it's been 8. A couple of those times the organization asked for chocolate chip cookies, which is one of my favorite things to bake. So
that's one of my favorite things to eat.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's the issue too, Staci. Yep. Yeah.
Do you have sort of a most memorable or most special, like, I know you don't get to meet the recipients or anything like that, but.
Right. I do. I have kind of it was a really beautiful story for me. So at the end of last year, December, one of the organizations was having, you know, something and asked for the bake. And I signed up and that was the cookies. And I made the cookies and I went to deliver them. And, you know, we have really clear instructions about the whole delivery process. And I did that. And a young lady came to the door and to get the delivery. And she said, do you mind if I take a picture with you? I know you're not supposed to do anything with the children or anything, but do you mind if I just, you know, do this? And I said, no, I don't mind. And so she took a picture of us and the cookies and everything. And then when I was getting ready to leave, she said, what's your name? And I thought, okay, well, my name is Tiffany. And she, long story short, this young lady who is now an administrator at one of these organizations was a foster child in my mother's home.
What?
Yes. And she was like, you look just like your mother and I remember you. So then we just had this beautiful conversation, and I was blown away when I left. Really, I was in tears, and I was just like, God, like this is like full circle. And so it was really a beautiful moment. So that was probably my most memorable bake
Mhm.
thus far.
You're just doing something so special.
Yeah, and it's like, sometimes I think in life we're going about life and just doing ordinary things or seemingly ordinary things, but they end up being, kind of extraordinary. And so like just to know like it was a gift for me and my mom as well to be able to say, hey, this young lady that used to take care of that was in our home is now serving children and families in this beautiful way. And, so it was just really a beautiful moment. Yeah.
Hmm. Have you ever thought about all those kids, the pictures? I mean, you're making the memories for them, just like you have with your grandma.
Yes, I do think about that. I think about that from the perspective of being a young girl or a young person myself, and just thinking like somebody took the time to do this for me, which means that I'm valuable, which means that I'm seen, which means that, I'm important. So I think about it from that aspect, and I'm a memory and a person who likes to keep and maintain history through photographs. And so I do hope that they are able to do that, because I feel like birthdays are so very special. And I hope that every time, one of these children or young adults gets a cake or cupcakes or cookies in their honor with their name or whatever little thing they may,
Mhm.
princess thing they ask for, or Batman or whatever it is, I really hope that they do feel special. And I think it's something kind of that you don't forget, because even though I've had 50 plus years of life, but I can still remember some of the birthday cakes, that I
Mhm.
made for me. So yeah.
What would you say to somebody who wanted to volunteer being a baker for goodness cakes?
I would say don't wait. I would say go for it, jump in. Don't be nervous or afraid to do your first bake, because even after I signed up, I was like, oh, I'm still a little nervous, and I wouldn't click that button to do my first. So I would say just go for it, because I do think that if you're signing up to do it, the reason is because there's something in you that wants to give and serve in that way. And so, as my husband said to me, I think that's enough. Just knowing that you're doing it with those intentions and that good heart. So go for it, because it will make a difference in a child or a young person's life. It'll make a difference in their day. Essentially, it makes a difference in that moment, and moments are what make up life.
Mhm. What are you feeling or thinking about after you've dropped off one of your bakes?
It has varied for me over the bakes that I've done. I know that I've dropped off again, because obviously I know what the organizations are. I understand um, the work that they're doing and the value in the work that they're doing. But many of the organizations are personal for me in terms of the service that they're giving. And so I have left bakes dropping off, feeling just grateful, grateful for the opportunity to share and give and to be a beautiful and bright spot in someone's day. I have left bakes feeling just like, as I was saying with the young lady that I met, like how life is sometimes a full circle, and a reminder to be loving and kind to anybody that you're coming in contact with, because you really don't know when you're going to meet them again. And it felt amazing that I could see her again and it not be like, this terrible thing, but it was a beautiful thing. Uh,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think I mostly just leave feeling grateful that for goodness cakes even exists. That's because that was a thought in somebody's mind before, and they could have just left it there. But
Yeah.
the fact that these two women decided, no, we're going to forge ahead with this, and just to see how it's grown, I think is a beautiful thing. So I love when people can take whatever it is that they love and they're passionate about and figure out a way to share it with the world.
You heard Carolyn talk about the marble run cake that she and her husband Tom McGovern created together. And now he joins me to share about his favorite baking projects so far and why he signed up to be a volunteer baker himself once Carolyn took on the co-leader role within the organization. He has spent his career in media production and communications, but there's a creative skill that he learned as a kid that he incorporates into some of his bakes.
My sister and I, we got a birthday cake every year, but I mean, it was, it was nothing fancy. It was just a, sheet cake out of the same insulated pan that all of our cakes came out of. Usually was out of a box with a canned frosting, whichever flavors we wanted. But it was still nice, and we both we both appreciated that. My mother would take the time to do that for us.
You have an interesting story about your wife Carolyn beginning first. Was that right?
Yes, when we were dating and first married, sometimes we would watch baking shows together. I was never much of a baker, but I enjoyed the competition aspect of some of these, so we're watching that. As part of, being a kid who liked making videos and making little films and things like that, I used to make little stop motion films, little figures out of clay and
Oh my
things like
gosh.
that. Yeah, and my wife was aware of that, and she had this idea, kind of inspired by all these baking shows, like just to make cupcakes one for her mom who loves flamingos, and she wanted to make these pink cupcakes with like chocolate wings and little flamingo heads, and she was like, "Can you make those out of fondant?" And I was like, "I'll give it a try." And they turned out really, really well. And so we both kind of were working together, kind of figuring out, hey, what else can we make? And so my niece had a baptism, and we made a Noah's Ark cake with lots of animals, and we were kind of looking for outlets for that. And Carolyn, she found this For Goodness cake, and she's the one who brought it to me and was like, "Hey, you want to do this as kind of an activity together?" And I was absolutely on board. And so it was something that I never actually thought of. I mean, I've never actually thought of myself as a baker. I still honestly don't. I mean, I like if I'm baking something by myself, I'm like, it's coming out of a box. It's not the scratch made nice things. I'm more of a decorator, but it's something fun and to do together, and it's something I never thought I would be. So
what was it in your heart that was telling you, let's keep doing this together?
I mean, I think it really was just to continue with what our original goal was, where I mean, I think, and when I say original goal, I mean, at first it was just, hey, here's a fun baking thing we can do together. But then when you see like all these different agencies and all these situations for all these different kids in all sorts of places where they normally wouldn't get a cake, and then it becomes more than just, oh, this is a fun hobby. This is actually doing something that really helps people. I mean, and so it was just kind of it really was kind of a no-brainer just to keep on with that, just to keep going in that pursuit.
Do you have a favorite cake that you've made, or a favorite sort of memorable story behind a recipient? I know you don't get to meet them, but
I think one of my favorite cakes that I did was that we did was a dinosaur cake that it was the first time I had been working with fondant a lot, but it was the first time I really took on making something big that was out of Rice Krispie treats. And so I kind of had to figure that out, of how to carve this figure and then cover it up. Wound up making this big Tyrannosaurus Rex with a big smile on its face, holding a little birthday present with a little hat on it. And yeah, so I was really proud with how that turned out, just as somebody who likes to decorate cakes. And then the other that I thought was really nice was there was one time where Carolyn, as chapter leader, often sees when you have an emergency bake, which means that some volunteers were sick or somebody's unable to do something, and you have to bake something on short notice. And so there were 2 cakes that needed doing quickly. And so we just we hurried. It was basically, we had like a day to make 2 cakes, and we went and we made a couple of sheet cakes, and we weren't able to do all the fondant stuff, but we bought some toys to go on that fit the theme, and they had the flavors that we needed, and we got these 2 cakes to where they needed to be. And I think that really made me think, I think a lot of people might get intimidated if they see all these cakes that are, look like they belong on a magazine cover, or they use these ingredients that they're completely unfamiliar with, and they're like, well, I don't know if I can do that. But it's really not about that at all. It's really just about, making some kid's day, because it's like, it doesn't matter if it's all fancy and covered with like edible arrangements and all sorts of things on it, or if it's just, here's their name and some fun sprinkles. It's, when they see their name on that cake and know that somebody's thinking about them on their special day, it's like, that's everything. That's the reason why you do this.
Emily Beckman joined For Goodness Cakes in November 2021, right after graduating from the University of Minnesota. She's been baking through a few gap years, and now she's in her 2nd year of medical school. And just like Kenzie, Emily worked at a local bakery in her hometown where she made and decorated cupcakes.
My mom was always really great about birthday celebrations. She wasn't a professional baker or anything, but she would always do her best to make sure that we had something that was like special to what we were into at that time. I really remember my kindergarten birthday. So I think I was turning 6, maybe 5 or 6. And I was really into bugs at the time. So she had like a bug themed birthday party, and she made these little dirt cakes that she put in terracotta like planters, and they had Oreo crumbles on the top and gummy worms. And I still like vividly remember that experience because you ate it with a spoon and all my friends thought it was so cool. So she would always come up with cool little things like that. And they were never super complicated, but just they reflected what we were into at that time. Yeah.
Have you ever thought about, so with your involvement with For Goodness Cakes, have you ever thought about sort of that memory or that joy that you're bringing to children or young adults who wouldn't maybe get it from their parents, or, for whatever reason, they're the recipient of your cake, and you're building those memories for them? Have you thought about that?
Yeah,
And what that means?
I think about that all the time because, sometimes you'll see a request that comes in and it's for something that you've never heard of. So there's a lot of research that is involved with having to look up what kids are into these days. Like, who is this anime character? Who is this cartoon? And to us, it feels maybe a little foreign, but then you realize like kids just have so many different hobbies and things that they're into throughout their lifespan that change, and just being able to celebrate like that year of their life and being able to give them something that's really unique to that time and that phase of their identity, I think is really important.
How did you know that in your heart this was just something that you wanted to give of your time and talents?
Yeah, I think it was just sort of this good combination of like, I really genuinely enjoy the process of making cakes. And even when they don't turn out exactly like I was thinking that they would, it's a really fun, creative process. Like for me, even though I'm really busy, being able to set aside a few hours where I'm working on a cake and I'm working on this creative project really like helps my mind and makes me, it like calms me down. It's a bit of a meditative process after you've been doing it for a while. And so that in combination with like, every now and then you'll get a message back from the agency or the family that just talks about how special that cake felt to their kid or to the people who received it. And it's like, that gratification of like the hours that you spent going into something that you really love to do, but then you find out that it also made those people really happy. Yeah, there's no way that I wouldn't do it.
Do you have a favorite cake or recipient? Do you have a favorite, a story if you look back on something that was extra touching or special, memorable?
Yeah, I have two. Most recently there was one and they just wanted a chocolate cake and it was for, I think, a 2-year-old. And whenever I see requests that are for kids who are, really young, of course, sometimes in your head you might think like, oh, the kid probably won't remember this, but the parents will. And for a lot of the agencies we work with, these might be single mothers or people who just need a little bit more support, and being able to like help them really celebrate their kid is something that's super powerful. But anyway, it was just a chocolate cake and I was like, easy peasy, I can do that. So I got to work and everything was going well, but it was my first bake in my new apartment. It was a little bit hotter than I was expecting. And, the cake turned out fine, but just to my standard, I just wished it had turned out a little bit more clean, a little bit more to the normal standard that I bake at. So I delivered it and I had put some like gold details on it. They didn't ask for gold or anything, but I was like, let's jazz it up. Let's make it fun, right? And about a week goes by and I get an email from For Goodness Cakes. And whenever people give feedback about the cake, they're always really good about letting the volunteer know what they said. And this one was just so touching. And it was like just talking about how the mom had said, oh, a golden cake for my golden boy. This made me so happy. And that really just made me like, man, this was a cake that felt a little bit harder for me to bake just from where I was at in my life. And also, I don't know why, but something in me was like, let's put some gold on there. Let's make it really fun. And then just a week later to hear that that was so special to them and still really meant something was really powerful to me and where I was at that week. So, yeah.
Yeah. It was meant to be.
Yeah.
What was the other one? Did you say there were a couple?
The other one was just like honestly a favorite design that I did. And that was a Princess and the Frog cake. And that is a really popular request. I mean, obviously it's a great movie. So I've seen lots of really cool Princess and the Frog cakes in our Facebook page, and a lot of them are kind of modeled after Tiana's dress and those colors. But I don't know, something in me that week was like, I want to make frogs. I want to make fondant frogs.
Oh my
So
gosh.
I sent a picture of it, but I made these two little fondant frogs, and one had a little crown, and they just turned out so cute. And I was just so proud of it. And I was like, this really captured the Princess and the Frog theme, and I just love it. So that was probably my favorite design that I've done.
You really embrace that creativity, don't you?
Yes, I do. I like listening to it and kind of letting it take me where it needs to go. So.
Yeah. I have just a couple more questions, but is there anything else that you wanted to add that we didn't think about or didn't talk about yet?
Not really. I think the thing I always tell people about For Goodness Cakes is that, yeah, of course, I'm making it seem like you have to have a really big skill set or something. You do not. You will start learning skills and start picking up techniques just with the more cakes that you make. And also the chocolate cake example was just a really good story of how it doesn't have to be the biggest, fanciest, most technique, it doesn't have to be a crazy cool cake. It can just be a chocolate cake that you put a little bit of intention and thought and love into, and that can make a really big difference for someone. So just having this very like tangible, it's just so obvious, like, hey, it's someone's birthday. And then it's just such a special moment to walk into an agency and be like, hey, I hear it's so-and-so's birthday. Here's the cake. It's so fun and everyone is so happy when they see it. And just seeing their reaction of like, oh my gosh, they are going to love this. You know that it's so fine-tuned for that kid. And yeah, you just can't help but smile and feel happy.
Donors and sponsors. You have corporate sponsors. You're looking for supporters, donors. I read that it costs $5,000 to run a chapter for a year. So that's including, like you said, your software. That is the key because you're 100% remote. So you have the software and you have your programming and bookkeeping. You try to do some sprinkle squad and the agency appreciation. So there's different things that you need to spend a little bit of money on. So $5,000 for a year. just share a little bit about how these people that donate or support or the businesses make it possible for Goodness Cakes to make a difference.
That financial support, our biggest expense is that computer system. It's called Argenta, but that's really, it's the hub between us, our agencies, and our bakers. Everyone uses that same program. So our agencies go in there directly to request whenever they have a cake they need. And then like Katie said, it's live. So that request is automatically put on that calendar so a baker can see what tasks are available, pick what works for them. We get feedback through it. It's really the hub of how the organization works. So good computer software is a little pricey. So that's what most of our money go towards. It is a volunteer run organization. So we're donating our time and our expertise. Our volunteers donate all of the cake supplies. So anything we can get physically to make a cake, or a cake box or sprinkles, we would give to our bakers so that kind of offsets any financial burden that someone might have if they want to bake but can't really afford all of that expense. We'd like to be able to help with that. But
just recently we had a 4-year birthday party for the Minnesota chapter. So we went up to one of our sponsors, Lynn's
Cake and Candy Supplies in Fridley.
They, every time a baker goes up there and ends up purchasing supplies, all they need to do is mention that they're a part of For Goodness Cakes, and For Goodness Cakes then gets 5% sent back to us.
And we get a discount there. So the baker gets a discount as well.
Yeah, the baker gets a discount and we get additional money. But we had our 4-year celebration up there. So Carolyn and I were able to get a whole bunch of sprinkles and give it to them, and merchandise. And so, I mean, we were able to give them something for our appreciation for it. So we hope to do more of those in-person kind of connections because we don't get to see our volunteers.
You've got your in-kind donations, your financial donations, and then even, like you said, if you try to have a little get together or something, if a place is interested in donating some space or a meal or something, to have your volunteer bakers come together for a little event. Every little thing helps, and every person or business has some way that they probably can help out For Goodness Cakes. So what about your cakes? Do you have a favorite cake that you've made, or, story behind a recipient?
I mean, we talked about the marble run cake. I like to do the bakes that have unique themes or requests. I love making, a good princess or unicorn cake, but it's the oddball ones that really catch my attention. I remember one girl, the cake request came in. She wanted a cake with an eagle on it, but she also wanted a Bible verse, flowers, stars, a moon, and balloons. And I saw that request and I was like, what on earth will that cake look like? And I thought about it. I was like, I don't know, but I want to make it. I want to see what I can do to see if I could get all of those things together on one cohesive cake. So I really enjoyed making that one. It was a little out of the box, but it was fun just with those odd requests where it's like, you're not going to find that cake anywhere else. So I want to make it
go to Target.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say for me, I have some that I've learned some dramatic lessons for. So at the beginning, I started out and I thought, oh, a frozen cake. I'm going to make a frozen cake. That's going to be so exciting. And I'm going to make like some sugar candied icebergs. And so we spent all this time making this like hard candy, rock candy, icebergs. And man, it was the hardest thing getting it out of its container. I had done no research whatsoever on this whole thing. I just totally went full on right into it without any kind of expertise whatsoever. And so first of all, we had the hardest time getting out. Finally, we got it out and I thought, oh, this is salvageable. And I put it on and I didn't even think about the fact that when rock candy touches something that has moisture in it, it's going to melt. And so now it started melting.
Oh no.
And I just thought, okay, all right. So I quickly grabbed it off. And like Carolyn said, sprinkles just cover up every single thing. I mean, it's just a little more sugar in the frosting. So whatever. And so I had to, I think I had to reroute a couple times on that cake. There was a lot of different changes in the theme. But my most memorable cake, I have to say, was my cocoa melon. First, I had to research and find out what cocoa melon is. So,
Oh yeah.
Your Goodness cake has really kept me into the toddler aspect of the world and what's important. So I
Who's
made a
Bluey?
yeah, right. I made a cocoa melon cake and I put it on my cake mount and I tilted it to try to get the stripes so that the watermelon, and I left it there just a little bit too long because it had filling and it started sliding. So I had to quickly reflip it back so that it would slide back, and it looked slightly pregnant. But I don't think the kid would ever have known or cared. But that cake, all I wanted to do was just get it out of my house. I just before any more disasters happen, we need to move it on.
We've all had those cakes where it's like,
Oh.
just get it out of here. I'm done with this
I
cake.
know.
Well, I want to know how it is that you both know in your heart that this is something that you want to give your time and talent to.
I will say, from years of being a special ed teacher, I mean, I've been involved with children since, I don't know, like 6 or so, and babysitting since I was 9, and seeing kids throughout my profession who really felt lost and not a part of a community, not connected, not celebrated. That was a huge impact for me. And having retired, I thought, well, I can do this. It kind of like fit right into my life. Not to mention, I love cooking for other people. That brings me a lot of joy. And it then also kept me intellectually stimulated to make sure that I could learn new things along the way. I would just challenge myself to learn something new. So for me, that's a big impact, and knowing that we're helping the community at large.
I agree with everything you said. There's so much going on in the world. There's so much negativity that's just everywhere. And when I found this organization, they're so completely focused on just making things a little bit better for kids who are dealing with so much. And I think at times it feels like there's nothing you can do. There's no way to make a situation better. And something as simple as a birthday cake to make such a big difference. And to think of a kid who doesn't have a birthday cake, I think just hit my heart so much that I knew I had to do something. And I know that every cake goes to a kid who wouldn't get one otherwise. And knowing that for just that day, they're recognized and they're reminded that someone cares, someone cared enough to take the time to make this cake just for them. I don't know how that could be anything but a good thing.
Right. I would also share that we don't have any religious or political ties whatsoever. And so it is just pure love that's being given.
Yeah.
We give birthday cakes and graduation cakes, but we also do special events. So there are special events that directly supporting the young people. But if an organization had like a summer solstice party and needed baked goods, they can get a special event link from us, a special request link, and they can request, pies or cupcakes or baked goods, which might be, cake pops or Rice Krispie bars or brownies or whatever. And so then they can have some summer or holiday, whatever their celebration is. We've done Black History, we've done Women's Month, Women's History, we've done St. Patrick's Day, holiday, Kwanzaa. So whatever event that they have. We actually just did one for a new organization. It was for their readathon. So all the bakers made, I think it was cupcakes only, right? For their readathon.
We made cake pops that looked like books. So
Okay. So
Oh, get out. Are you serious?
Yeah.
Cute.
yeah. So that's an opportunity also. And our
I didn't
bakers
know that part of
really
it.
love that, because that gives, those go the fastest because it's kind of free reign, especially the baked goods. They get to figure out what they want to do, how they want to do it, and fit within that theme. So it's a lot more creative and free flowing. So they love those.
That just made me think, is there a minimum number of bakes a sprinkler needs to do in a year?
Nope.
Not
Do you have
needs
kind of,
to, not needs to, but we do have a limit for 2 bakes at this point. For most of our bakers every month. We do have an emergency baking squad. Like yesterday, I got a request to let go of a cake that was due today because this person had some home stuff going on. And so I sent out an email to our emergency bakers, which consist of, I think, about 4 or 5 bakers who have all told us that they wanted to be an emergency baker, and just said, if anybody can pick this up, it's out on the portal, and so we have those people who are able to do that. And even if you have more flexibility and just wanted to become an emergency baker, you could do that too.
mm-hmm. What was the limit of 2 to only make that many, or that you need to make that many in a month?
No,
Only
you
make-
can only make that many. We have so many bakers in the Twin Cities chapter that we were finding some bakers didn't have a chance to bake at all because we have some really excited bakers and they just pick up
Very
every
excited.
request that they want.
Very,
So in an effort to make it a little bit more spread out amongst our 350 bakers, we ask that they only do 2 a month, unless it's a special circumstance, or like during the holidays, we had so many requests for special event treats. We had thousands of treats going out in December. So those are kind of, whoever can do them, please take as many as possible. But for the birthday cakes, we limit them to 2 a month.
You have to spread the love within your organizations among the bakers too.
Exactly.
Don't take them all. I love this story, ladies. Thank you. What do you want to leave people with today?
I just think if you have the opportunity to bake for us or help us with fundraising or donations, or be in an agency that would like some support, we would love to contact and talk to you.
Or just help us spread the word and spread the love.
If you would like to volunteer, support, donate, or connect with the Twin Cities chapter or any of the For Goodness Cakes chapters across the United States, you'll find them on forgoodnesscakes.org. And you can also find the links in this episode's show notes directly in your podcast app. To my guests, Carolyn, Katie, Chris, Melissa, Audrey, Kenzie, Tiffany, Tom, and Emily, thank you for sharing your stories and for your service to the kids and the communities of the Twin Cities. Photos and links from this episode are also on randomsweets.com. You and I will come back together again soon for season 3 of Funeral Potatoes and Wool Mittens. I hope that you know how grateful I am that you are listening, you're tuning in, subscribing. Some of you are texting me or messaging me on Facebook or Instagram, and I just really appreciate every review that you write or interaction, and if you share this with family and friends, because recommending this podcast is the highest compliment that you can give to me. I'm your host, Staci Mergenthal. Sweet wishes.